You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Okay, now we have covered the period 1960 to 1990, and we're going to see again a cycle of change, as I've shared with you, of anti-democratic forces that are always pitted against progressive reform. And so let's take a look at the anti-democratic forces. The bottom thirds needs to change. To take a look at, again, socialist influence, socialist organizing, influencing progressive reform. Let's start again.
Okay, my bad.
Start again.
Okay,
Start again.
5, 4, 3, 2.
One. Okay, now we've finished another cycle, 1960 to 1990. Whoops, you're doing it again. Whoops. No. We need to change
Yeah,
it.
my apologies.
It's
He's
okay.
putting it
We're going to come back. All right. Okay. All right, we ready?
Is it the 1930 to 1961?
No, I just finished the 1930 to 1960. Now we're going to do a 1960, this one, 1960, 1990.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay, we're ready. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Okay, now we've finished this period 1960 to 1990, so we're going to take a look at another cycle of change again, of anti-democratic forces pitted against progressive reform. In this crucial 30-year period is important for us to understand simply because of the reaction that's going to occur to one of the most significant reform movements ever, which is the 1960s. So let's take a look at socialist organizing, influence, and reform again with regards to this cycle. And in this particular case, what we've got the wrong background. There we go, that's the right background. We've got civil rights movements, the civil rights movements for change. We've covered the black civil rights movements, the Chicano movement, the Native American movement, women and gay liberation movements, and then most importantly, throughout the third world. Throughout the world, there are massive revolutionary movements to oust imperialist countries, especially Europe and the United States, and so we get what are known as the rise of third world liberation movements. And most importantly, this time, the significance of the 1960s was students. Students were involved in influencing change. Students for a Democratic Society that started up in Michigan and went throughout campuses throughout the North, and then over here in California, starting at Berkeley with the free speech movement. And then what's going to bring all of these movements together for change is going to be Vietnam. The flames of protest are going to occur throughout in the 1960s. There was the peace movement, there was the countercultural movement, there was the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, there were the killings of students at Kent State and Jackson State, and then this influenced one of the most important progressive reform movements possible, which was Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. And Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, as you saw in the presentation, brought us what we know today as Medicare and Medicaid, and all the different kinds of programs that are available for stopping discrimination, the influencing of civil rights, the influencing of women, women's participation in society and in terms of jobs and equal pay, as well as Title IX and getting women's sports programs implemented. But as usual, what's going to happen, there's going to be a conservative reaction to the regulatory state. It starts with President Richard Nixon and his Southern strategy. And of course, one of the things that's most important is that it leads to corruption. We're going to get Watergate, and the first president to be impeached, he will actually resign. We get with the election of Ronald Reagan. With the election of Ronald Reagan, there was a new term that was introduced in the American lexicon. It was known as Reaganomics. And the idea behind the conservative reaction in the 1980s was to attack Lyndon Johnson's Great Society and all the programs that were designed in terms of affirmative action to bring in minorities into school, to bring women, to the disabled, and of course a reaction against the New Deal, to stop labor organizing, to stop the minimum wage, to stop the right that workers should have to the decision-making process at work. The idea was to dismantle the regulatory state, stop the Environmental Protection Association, stop businesses from being regulated. Ronald Reagan and his administration is going to call it trickle-down economics. And what happens is you get corruption, scandal, and crime. The Keating affair, the Iran-Contra affair. And at this time is the rise of a moral majority. And the moral majority is going to claim reverse discrimination. We're going to see televangelists come out and argue for making America great again, going back to the traditional values where blacks were in their place, where women were in their place, where minorities were in their place, where Mexicans were eliminated and just deported. And again, return to traditional values. And what is the traditional values? It seems that conservative reaction to the traditional values is trying to tell white America that they're going to be okay, but it celebrates greed and it celebrates greater social injustice. And so again, we've followed through another cycle of a conservative reaction to the regulatory state of anti-democratic forces pitted against progressive reform. We see this as a third cycle.
Okay.
Now I'm